Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of RC Retirement. I'm your host, DJ, and today we're going to listen to, or rather watch, well, depending on your format, part two of my interview with a retired field grade officer named William, as we talk about his experience with the receipt of variable separation incentive and all the adventures that go with that. There's been a pretty good response to part one of that, although my putting out part two has been delayed. I won't go into all the ifs, thens, and wherefores on that. We'll just go right into getting this part out there for you. And I'm going to be away for part three, so I'm actually pre-recording part three, or the intro to part three. So that will be a pre-set release, so you won't have to worry about that. It will be out there for you whether I'm here or not. So good news. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right into part two of my interview with William and see what he has to say about his experience with variable separation incentive, or VSI. Here we go. When you first contacted me, you said you were already receiving retired pay. It had been a few years after deployment, obviously, and that you were receiving concurrent retired and disability pay, CRDP, which makes up for part of the offset of VA compensation and retired pay. So you obviously at some point had received some counseling about retirement benefits and some assistance in obtaining those benefits. However, there obviously was a problem with your pay. Would you please tell us about that problem?
Well, I had two issues, and part of it I think is probably because I was an IRR guy getting ready to retire. You know, I knew that I had to request retirement from the military. I assumed it'd be a very, yeah, I'm ready to retire. I'll sign a piece of paper, and come retirement day or payday, you'll send me a check. Well, it didn't work out like that. And turns out I had to, because I was had gone from active to reserves to active to IRR and back and forth, that I had to submit this 20 or 30 page packet with old orders and retirement notifications and 20-year letter and X, Y, Z, submit it. And then it sat on somebody's desk for several months. And then come retirement date, I'm officially retired, but there's no money. Well, the guy tells me, well, we don't actually process it until your actual retirement date. And I said, well, how long is that going to take? Like a week? He goes, no, it's going to take a couple of months because you've been in so many different things. We have to do everything by hand. I was like, this is unbelievable. Unbelievable. So it took several months after I was supposed to be getting paid to actually get the retirement situated. So that was interesting, but painful. I didn't expect that. It was a very antiquated system that they were using. I thought they could just, punch a button on the computer and print it out, but it didn't work that way.
Oh, as I understand it, the Defense Finance computer system was designed in the early 1980s and has just been patched to be compatible with later systems since then. But it's still a 1980s system. I used that, elements of that system when I was on active duty, and yeah, it's a DOS-based system, using line commands, line entry commands, and it's old.
Yeah.
It's So I'm not surprised that they're having to do. I'm surprised that we were talking before we started the interview. You said they had to do calculations by pencil.
Yeah.
I'm almost not surprised that they have to do that because they have no official software to do it for them.
Right.
Actually horrifies me. This, with our level of technology, this kind of calculation should be baby stuff, but it's not.
No, it's not. It's not.
And,
It was
and,
not an easy.
actually, it is. In the National Guard, I mean, they're talking about calculating your retirement age, right? Is that what they were trying to calculate?
Yeah, they wanted to do
To verify your retirement age.
my retirement age, all my points, everything.
The National Guard Retirement Points database has exactly that capability. The Retirement Points Accounting Management Database, RPAM, does that. But none of the other reserve components, nor DFAS, have compatible software to understand what the RPAM database can do. But if you punched in all of your data into the Army National Guard, not Air Guard, but Army National Guard's RPAM database, including the data of your eligible deployments, it would calculate to the day what your early retirement age would be. No stubby pencil required.
Yeah. Would have been nice. Would have been nice.
I've got an Excel version of that as part of my retired pay calculator. I sent you that when we were talking by email a few months ago. I basically just, backward calculated, reverse engineered what RPM was doing based on the Title 10 law and plugged it into Excel formulas to do the same thing.
Right.
So, the math is really not that hard. Once you understand what the law is, you can convert it into simple if-then statements. And if you understand basic algebraic functions, which is all that an if-then statement happens to be,
Right.
then it's not hard. But there I go.
But yeah, I found it difficult. I was like, oh, why do I need to send you a copy of my retirement orders when you're part of the Army, right? So don't you have that? Or don't you have these orders? Because you sent me to these countries, but now you want me to send you the orders that sent me to these countries. Who's tracking what?
Yeah. Now, for that, I get it and I don't get it. For example, Human Resources Command wants all these things from you. And, well, I've been to Human Resources Command to the retirement section, the reserve retirement section, and it's about 18 to 20 people each, and they're subdivided into various responsible sections, for different things. But HRC itself is massive. It's this huge complex. Well, it's not like Pentagon massive, but it's a pretty darn big building. I would not be surprised if it could easily hold 1,000 people.
Yeah.
So just imagine all the different, sections inside and whatnot. So if they're asking for, copies of orders and whatnot, I would imagine it's just because the you got to think 1950s style here. It's because the paper version of that order is in a file cabinet on the far other side of the building.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah. Now, in my 2020 thinking, I should be able to open up your computer file and see everything.
Yep.
Which, of course, is not Army thinking. In 2020, now, of course, I'm in my 40s, so I'm apparently not supposed to think in modern terms. I'm supposed to think in paper terms. But in 2020, think you shouldn't have to do anything by paper at all.
Right.
It should just be, hi, I'm William. Here's my I'm eligible for retirement. Here's my bank account information. And then, let's say I'm the one that you called or you emailed. Let's say you called me. So, okay, I asked you 2 or 3 questions to verify your identity. Pull up your info on my computer. Yep, that's you. And yep, you're eligible. Enter your bank account information. What's your survivor benefit election? It's X. Done. You'll be paid next week.
Yep.
That's how easy it should be.
It should be. One must remain hopeful.
Elect me king, and
You gotta have hope.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. Well, let's move on. We conversed back and forth, via email about this problem back in February, and I recommended. Actually, we never got to the other part of your problem. You mentioned, the hardships of getting your retired pay, but what was the other part of your problem?
The other issue was the VSI, Voluntary Separation Incentive. At some point, I knew that the Army DFAS would begin deduction of those funds from my pay, but it did not occur for several years. And you're busy in your day-to-day life, and all of a sudden it's like, I've never gotten a letter, I've never gotten an email, a phone call that something is going to occur. And so I contacted, you and I talked about it, and you suggested I talk to DFAS proper on what the status was. They actually said they had gotten a letter or gotten a document in like that week with my information on it, and then they would begin processing this. And that's like the first information I'd heard from them on it from the time I signed the original VSI agreement, 20 years ago or whatever it was, 1,000 years ago when I signed it. But that was the first time I'd ever got any information that something was going to be processed, was going to happen. Didn't know quite when, but I was in their system, which I said, okay, because obviously if it's a debt that I owe, I've got to pay it, and I prefer to get it started so I'm not paying, have to repay it when I'm 90 years old. Get it done and be done with it.
Exactly. So DFAS actually admitted the problem was on their side, which is interesting in itself. And that they would start, deducting X number of dollars per month from your pay to recoup the VSI. Did that ever happen?
It has not happened yet. They said they would give me a 90-day notice when it occurred.
Have you received that notice?
I'm not as of yet. And I think my contact with them was probably, I think we were talking in March, April timeframe, maybe.
mid
Oh,
to late April, and I think it
cool.
carried on into early March.
Okay, so then maybe, I anticipate within the next 90 days, it'll probably kick off. I mean, they were glad that I called them. Like, thank you for being honest. I said, well, I don't want to be surprised and think I'm going to be getting, a retirement paycheck, and then I don't want to lose it all. And I was afraid I'd get hit for back pay for 3 years, 4 years, and obviously I don't want that. I knew it was going to be painful one way or the other, but I wanted to hope that it would be less painful.
The liaison up there is a good person.
Oh yeah, very, very helpful. Absolutely.
So I'm glad that you had that experience. I
Yeah,
expected you would, but
yeah, he
I'm
was
glad to
very
hear it
helpful.
nonetheless. I'm going to rant a little because this is a problem I've seen many times, both when I was on active duty as a retirement services officer and since I've been in private practice as well. When I was on active duty, we saw so many of these cases and figured that there were so many more like them that we started calling it Operation Iceberg, because we figured that what we actually saw was only the tip of the problem. There's this much that we see, but this much that we don't. As in people who are receiving retired pay and let's just say VA compensation without an offset, or people who are receiving retired pay and owe separation pay, but is not being recouped yet. So there's sizable debt. There are countless retirees, or there were in our state that were, in the case of the first example, receiving retired pay and VA compensation without an offset, and were being told that everything was just fine for years. Finally, after 2 or 3 years of this, they would receive debt letters from DFAS saying that they owed tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in overpaid monies, and they would obviously be horrified.
Yeah.
They'd done the right thing. They had followed up on the issue. They'd been told everything was copacetic, and then suddenly there's this massive discrepancy. And even worse, there's not a waiver for it. They had to find a way to pay back the money. They were not even aware of combat-related special compensation, in fact. No, in fact, to make it worse, they could not even receive it because since they were not getting the VA offset to their retired pay, they did not meet one of the criteria to get CRSC. So that's not even an option. I even have one person who has this similar circumstance, who is getting CRSC, but her CRSC is being garnished
Right.
to pay back the debt, which is actually what I think is supposed to happen. That's why I was trying to get these other folks to apply, and then we found out they couldn't get it because they didn't have the offset.
I didn't even know of CRSC. I didn't even know what that was until a few years ago. I never heard the term, and I was like, I had sort of CRDP, and then going to your website about, you mentioned CRSC, like we're going to have a briefing tomorrow or your next briefing, and I was like, what's that?
Oh, so I'm the reason you have that now.
No, basically.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that.
Because it's just one of those things. It's like, what is this now? You're trying to navigate all this stuff. Here's Army retirement. Here's VA disability. What is this CDRP? What is this CRSC? How does this affect me? Is one better than the other? One's taxable, one's not taxable. What do you do? Which do I choose? know,
Whichever
and
one's better for you.
that's right. That's right.
So
And that can change.
it can, yeah, every day. Well, I ranted a little bit a moment ago about people with these, problems. Um, what advice would you have for people who are facing these sorts of things, since you have gone through it yourself? You're still going through it.
Yeah. I would. I wish I had counseling on, retirement counseling. That, I mean, I had a basic understanding that yes, I had a separation debt that had to be repaid. So I understood that. But there's so many ins and outs. So there's a VA issues that, I was never briefed on. I never understood a lot of that. The process, you're dealing with this, you're dealing with retirement, then the CRSC pops up. You're like, what the heck's that? So, the more the more information you can get either through self-education and or proper counseling. But I would say get counseling, but don't, don't just listen to one website or where people are just, you know, hit several, find out what, the truth lies somewhere in between. There's, a lot of people guess about some things you read on like certain VA websites, and I read and go, well, that's not true. That's not even close to the regulation, but they're making these assumptions and typing up their answers to questions. So get good counseling, do your research. If you don't understand something, ask again. If somebody cannot explain it to you, find somebody who can explain it to you and verify the information you're getting. That's what I would say. Because otherwise you're a ship and you're just floating in the water somewhere.
That's true.
And it's not fun.
I've been, for people going through these sorts of situations, I've invariably advised not spending any overage that they may have and socking it away in a savings account.
Yeah.
But it seems like in every instance, there's a financial hiccup and folks end up tapping into that money. Then, sadly, the debt letter arrives and they're unprepared.
Yeah.
You would think, as much as they claim to have their computer systems linked together to prevent such issues, that DFAS in the VA would be able to prevent the kinds of oversights that we're discussing. But clearly they don't, because it's happening far too often. And service members are being left out in the financial cold as a result. Suffering undue hardship, in my opinion. And they can't even result to hardship waivers that DFAS would approve in other circumstances, but not this time. They have to pay. So if I'm not careful, I'm going to rant for 20 minutes about this, because I really despise inefficiency and accepting inefficiency as a matter of course, which of course is what we're seeing here. But now that I've voiced my opinion on this, what are your thoughts overall on what we're seeing, cause, effects, etc.? Just overall, what's your thought on this?
Well, I mean, I agree with you that, if someone is, if they've been warned that, hey, you're getting paid too much money, You need to sock it away. I got that, and it's a hard thing to do when you're living life and the car breaks down or whatever. But I think one of the concerns is that when you get separation benefits, et cetera, you need to make sure you understand all the rules dealing with that. Because when I got out and took the separation benefits, I had lump sum or annual payment. I took the annual payment. Well, if I'd have taken the lump sum payment at this point in my life, the VA, because of their rules, they could come and take all my VA disability and take it away in one fell swoop. And the Army's going to take their chunk. Now, supposedly you could, at that point, deal with the DFAS and say, I'm wiped out at this point. Can you take less money? Now, you're, 63 years old and you're expecting, $5,000 a month in disability or whatever, and your retired pay and all that. And then suddenly it's been cut by 75%. What are you going to do? You can't fight it. You can't ask the VA to cut you a break because they're not going to do it. And so you're going going back to work to survive. Because you no longer can you pay your bills. Whether you understood the rules or not, it is what it is at that point. And you've got to say, all right, well, I've got to suffer for 5 or 8 or 10 years until the debt is paid. So the money starts coming back in again, which opens up a whole litany of other painful options. And if you're disabled, who's going to hire you? So that's another problem.
And to get on an ageist kick, the older you get, the harder it is by default to find work anyway.
Yeah.
And if you don't have, disabilities.
Yeah. So it's not, it's a really tough situation to get into. I had hoped that when I hit retirement, I said, okay, I'm safe. This is what I have. This is what I have to live on. Okay, got it. And I know that my debt has to be paid. Got it. Understand that. But having the potential threat, of the VA swooping in and taking everything, I mean, that's not a little chunk of change. That's everything. And it's, that would be a tough thing to face at, over 60 years old. You go from, a decent life to
Poverty.
And then you can't pay your bills and your car gets repossessed and blah, 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 blah. And it's just one thing after another. And there's nothing you can do to correct it until the debt is paid. And in my case, that's 10 more years.
Yeah, that actually shocked me when I ran the calculations for you, seeing how long it would take to recoup that money.
Yeah, now if I was independently wealthy, that'd be one thing. I could say, Army, take it all for 4 years. Take it all. Take it right on. But I'm not.
Right.
And wish I was. That'd be nice, but I've got to wait 10 years until that debt's paid off. So that's where I am.
Well, morbidly, if you pass, that does not pass. That debt does not pass on to anybody else. So,
that's a good thing.
It's not something that follows onto an estate. So. the weird term that DFAS used was it's a recoupment, not a debt, which I thought was playing word games, but you know, like
I've read that 1,000 times.
Yeah, like it's a debt, but thank you for at least not, chasing after a widow or a widower, after they've already had one traumatic event in their lives.
Yeah.
I actually learned that bit of trivia early on in my career in retirement services. I got a call from I never spoke with the retiree himself. It was always his wife because he was rather infirmed. I only spoke with him long enough to get his permission to talk about his affairs, and that was about it. And then never spoke to him again for, well, heck, the entire time. It was all his wife. But he had taken separation pay. I don't remember which type. I think it was SSB, Special Separation Benefit. But it must have been VSI actually, because it was well over $200,000.
Hmm.
And I don't think SSB ever got that high.
No, I don't think it did.
But it was enormous. And they either had just started receiving retired pay or were about to start receiving it. And the wife was really concerned about, no, I think he was just about to turn 60, because she was asking all the usual retirement benefits questions as well. But she was concerned about, if he passed away, would she still be liable for the VSI debt? And I didn't know. So I had just made acquaintance face to face with the liaison with whom you spoke. So I gave him a call and learned that nice bit of trivia, that no, it does not. And was very, very pleased to learn that. But I still thought it was a silly word game. It's a recoupment, not a debt. Well, just say no, it doesn't follow the spouse.
Well,
all right, whatever. Well, that's actually all I've got. I do thank you for being so willing to give me your time and your willingness to appear on this interview.
You provide good service, and you gave me some good information. I mean, some of the information that you go through, I mean, it's not fun. Some of it's pretty dry, but if you don't listen, sometimes you gotta listen. If you don't understand it the first time, read it again. Don't hear it right the first time, listen to it again, and that's okay, because there's so much information out there.
That's actually something I've noticed with my videos. It seems like no one watches them straight through. They watch them in about 5 to 6 minute blocks. It might be a 20-minute video, but they'll watch them in pieces. So apparently, I'm only interesting at 5 minutes at a time.
Or maybe another way to look at it is there's certain parts that are more key, and so you can listen. If you're talking CRSC and I'm focusing, and my target is CRSC. You're mentioning that, and you're talking over 5 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna listen. All right, do I understand that? Maybe, sort of, kind of. Let's listen to it again. And I would rewind stuff just to say, do I have a good understanding of this now in my situation? Yes or no?
Yeah. When I look at the analytics for videos, it'll say, for this 20-minute video, average view duration, 7 minutes. Like, Well, that's odd. You know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people are getting bored or if they're doing as you say, maybe the question was answered after 7 minutes,
Yeah.
or what? Who knows? You know. But it
Well,
takes a long and a short to make an average. So
yeah.
maybe one person started and it's like, okay, that's not what I wanted, and then another person went through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
but what I like hearing is they're actually helping people. So, and
Yeah.
that was the whole point. I started doing this because I realized that what was in my head, and this isn't to make me sound like I'm the expert on all things, but I realized that what I knew is what everyone else needed to know about retirement benefits. And being the retirement services officer for Michigan at the time, I couldn't go out to every National Guard armory and train everybody.
Right.
And I also knew that I was starting the medical evaluation board process. I was going to be retired in a year or so. And I also wanted to keep doing this, in civilian life. So it's like, well, let me kill two birds. I'll start this YouTube channel, start teaching everybody, regardless of whether they're in my state or not.
Yeah.
And
All right, so that was part 2, and I hope that was good information for you. Please join me soon for part 3, and we will wrap up this interview. You will get to hear me rant, and you'll get to hear the two of us just, yak about some off-topic things, but that's part of the fun of conversation. So join us in part 3 for that. But don't, just because I said there's some off-topic stuff, don't use that as a reason to skip part 3. There is some good information there as well. So join us for part 3. Now, if you would like to support my efforts, please remember that you can join my Patreon campaign at patreon.com/rcretirement. There are several preset levels of support, but you can also create one of your own. And these support contributions are per month, not per episode, so keep that in mind as well. And you can also get personal support from me by going to rcretirement.com and looking at the fees for service page. There are several different services I offer directly to you, and I can help you improve your situation, such as applications for retired pay, combat-related special compensation, applications to the boards of corrections for military records, and a whole list of other services as well. So keep that in mind. So moving on, please join me for next week's episode. And until then, thank you for being part of this audience, and thank you for your service. Have a great day.
if you liked what you heard on today's episode, then please go below and give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to this channel. Also, please let other people know about this channel and the information it can provide for them. If you have questions or comments, then please have no qualms about posting them in the comments section below. Please remember the RC Retirement YouTube channel and the RC Retirement website are not recognized or endorsed by the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs, or any other government agency. The information presented in these resources are for entertainment and informational purposes only. Also, the content of either of these resources should not be considered financial or legal advice. Please consult with your own legal counsel, accountant, or financial planner before making any decisions based on what you have learned here. As always, thank you for watching the RC Retirement YouTube channel.